way from Conneautville, Lionsville, all the way to Titusville and Spartansburg, the whole county. And I'm also fire chief at Conneautville, also known as Fells Club. That's a longer story. The fire department in Conneautville. So, and then with me, you want to introduce yourselves?
I'm Jenn Treacy. I am a volunteer firefighter with Conneaut Lake Volunteer Fire Department. I also am a 911 dispatcher, so I work in the same office as Alan does, and on the radio you'll hear me dispatching. So I've been doing this dispatching for about 20 years. I've been firefighting since 1998.
And I'm Jenn Treacy. Just by chance happen to be Jen's dad. But I'm also the fire chief down in Conneaut Lake. A lot of you know Station 3. We're actually Department 7. All the departments in the county are ranked or numbered 1 through 40.
40, 89.
89. Yeah, so that's how we can tell who's what. But I've been a firefighter volunteer. Well, what volunteer means is it's not a career for me. I don't get paid. But now that I've retired for 7, 8 years, it's kind of full-time for me. But I've been for 45 years volunteer firefighter, serving the Conneaut Lake community. Most of the departments in the county are volunteer at this time, but volunteerism is dropping off. It's hard to find people that want to give up a lot of time and go to calls, middle of the night, whatever. But there's also a lot of careers right now in Crawford County. Beebe is a paid department. They also have a paid ambulance service. The ambulance services in the county are mostly paid. Titusville has a paid department along with what they call Minuteman that will leave work and then they get paid. Erie County, there's more and more departments up there. We're going to paid departments. Mill Creek Township, for example, up near the Mill Creek Mall, they have, I think, 35 now paid firemen. Erie County, Erie City of Erie's paid, and like I said, a lot of most of the departments I'm told now have some paid members on staff in the volunteer departments in Erie County. So there is careers to be had in firefighting in this area.
Sure, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, how I got to my job, how Jenn got to her job, by starting. I started when I was 16 years old in Conneautville. My dad was a firefighter and the ambulance chief, so of course, he kept running out the door for fires and ambulance calls, so it looked like fun. I'd go to the fire station with him, hang out, so it's a lot of fun. So first we'll talk about the junior firefighter EMS programs that the departments have. Not all the fire departments have an ambulance service that runs with them, but there's both the opportunity of being fire and or EMS, and then there's a whole realm of other things you can do to help in the fire service. And Jenn brought one of our latest and greatest tools is a mobile data terminal. That's what we call it, but she'll go over that in a little bit. So the junior firefighter, junior EMS program is ages 14 to 17. First off, is anyone here a junior? Because I know there's some juniors in the fire or ambulance service. Not yet? Okay. So ages 14 to 17. You need a school physical form and working papers. So it's like you're getting a job, but at your age we're volunteering, and the three of us, we still volunteer. We don't get paid for running on the fire trucks or ambulances. Academics, high school report cards are reviewed by the fire chief, ambulance chief, to make sure you keep good grades. I think you have to have a C or higher, or departments might have their own different levels of what kind of grades you need to have at school, because school comes first. You can't do sports if you don't have good grades. You can't be in the fire and ambulance service if you don't have good grades, because good grades is really important. So the fire and ambulance service is kind of what you put into it. A lot of times we train once a week. I think Conneaut Lake trains on Tuesday nights. Conneautville, we train on Thursday nights for 2 hours every Thursday night. We have a business meeting one of those nights. But we talked about training. So every year in September, there's the Crawford Venango Fire School. They used to have it in Cambridge Springs, where the fire school grounds are now. They moved a lot of those classes to the Crawford County Fairgrounds, a little more central in Crawford County. But there's a 16-hour class that they run different classes that weekend, anywhere from basic, putting up ladders, what to do with hoses, how to cut people out of cars, and then they go into more technical type. How do you rescue someone that's stuck on top of a roof, or how do you put out a tanker truck that's on fire? So it's a lot of really good hands-on training. Of course, there's death by PowerPoint. I'm sure you're aware of that. But then, we really get outside and use the tools that we have on the trucks and the ambulances to practice our skills that we learned in the classroom. So training never stops. I mean, John still goes to training. Jenn and I, we still go to training. So it's important to always train, because if you don't use it, you lose it. My daughter Abby's in 6th grade upstairs, and some of the math and some of the stuff she's learning, I'm like, I'm not sure about that. Google's great. I don't know if you knew that or not. Google. But we're always learning how the fire equipment and how our gear has changed so much from when John first started in the fire service till today. And Jenn brought her gear, and she can show you some of that. So everything's changing. Even CPR. Now we do no hands CPR. Anybody trained in CPR? No? Okay. We'll work on that. What's that? You can do it. Sing the song Staying Alive, just do chest compressions. Because they found by us exhaling into someone that's not breathing, we're not giving them that much more oxygen. So the best thing to do is chest compressions. I think over at CASH, they have an EMT class. Mrs. Moran, I think it is. Marina. Yeah.
She does help, yeah.
Yeah.
Did she get EMT? They opened up that class?
Yeah, they did. We took an ambulance over and let the students.
That's how Jenn got started.
That's one of the ways I got started.
Why don't you go ahead and talk about that?
I got started when I was 14 years old. You can join the fire department when you're 14. A couple weeks leading up to my 14th birthday, I went down to the station with my dad. I'd grown up in a firehouse. We fitted me out for some gear. So I had gear sitting there ready for my 14th birthday. I got off school that day and the siren went off. I didn't know what to do. So Dad called my mom and said, bring her down to the station, we have a fire call. And it was one of the biggest calls around that year. It was right here at the end of the school drive. There was a flower shop at the end of the school. And it was Flowers by Jim, and we had a big fire that day. So on my 14th birthday, October 7th, 1998, I went to my first fire. And I was hooked. I loved it. It was fun. But I also didn't know what I was doing. So I started going to drills. I started taking trainings. One of the trainings I got was Essentials of Firefighting. My dad was also a state BVR instructor, so I got to go to BVR, which is Basic Vehicle Rescue. So I thought that was really cool. At 16 years old, I learned how to cut cars apart. So I went to Conneaut Lake here, and back at that time, they had a health class in Linesville. The high school was here, and there was also Linesville High School, Conneaut Valley. I drove every day over to Linesville High School to take my EMT class. I took it as a health class. As soon as I was finished with my class, I started working at Conneaut Lake Ambulance. It was one of my favorite jobs. I got to drive the ambulance, run the lights and sirens, help people out in my community. A couple months in, they heard my voice on the radio, and one of the directors at the 911 center said, "Who is that?" And said, "Bring her in for an interview." So I went in for an interview at 911, and that's kind of how I got led to my career that I'm at today. 911 is one of the coolest jobs. It's a lot of knowledge, it's a lot of learning. My background in the fire service definitely helped me, but we have dispatchers that have no fire experience, no medical experience, and they're great dispatchers. I've worked some of the biggest fires in the county over the years. I've worked some of the biggest crashes. I've taken calls for heart attacks, traumatic injuries, all kinds of horrible things, but I've also, listened to calls where babies are being born. We've helped elderly that are lost in the woods. Last year, our technology that we have at the 911 center, if you call 911, we can see where you're at. We had a man in the woods that called 911. It also is, our maps are synced with these tablets. And the crew on that day actually synced when we were able to drop a pin where that collar was. And that collar said, I'm having extreme chest pain, and he was hunting in the woods up in a tree stand. So they sent an ATV unit, they sent a medical team, the ambulance, the fire department, and they put out a search. And they were able to see exactly where that collar was on their little tablets. And that collar had a heart attack in the middle of the call. This tablet, they walked right up to him using their tablets that they have. And they started CPR, and a couple weeks later, that man walked out of the hospital, and they had a big meeting with the media, and he shook his hand of all the responders. And that was pretty cool to be, part of the system that has grown so much over the years to save lives. And it's really cool to be a part of it. And I started at 14 years old, and here I am, all these years later, a dispatcher. I love my job. I love volunteering. I get to go in burning fires. I've done some really cool trainings in the last year. I've done ropes classes. We've learned how to pull people out of ravines. I've jumped in the freezing lake in the middle of wintertime in a Gumby suit. We've driven the hovercraft from the STAT team. It's been a really cool career. Just a couple weeks ago, we had a big fire, and I saved a cat. We have the equipment for animals. We saved a cat. We brought it out of the fire. We gave it oxygen. We saved a cat. Even cats are cool. I mean, I've done some really cool things. And you guys could all be a part of this. It doesn't just start here. Alan started as a volunteer. He's an EMA director. I'm a dispatcher. A lot of people go into volunteering. They're also nurses. We have lawyers. We have car salesmen that, you can be anything, and you can also be a volunteer fireman. That's the fun of it, is it's volunteer. You do it on the extra time that you have. So.
Great. Also, some other people have gone into like state police. And they're actually a fire marshal. And then because of the technology, a lot of folks in the public safety field, they get into the software. There's people that sell software. When we started in the 911 center, it was all push buttons and we pick up a phone. Now there's, I don't know.
Now it's all clicks on. I have 6, 7 computers in front of me. So I have 2 administrative, a radio. I have a CAD, which is a computer-aided dispatch. And if anybody ever wants to do a sit-in at Crawford County 911 and see what we do, look up the number on Google, call the director, come sit in and watch, listen to real live calls. We have maps, we have our dispatch CAD, we also have our crimes computer. We can run driver's licenses, license plates, warrants for the county. We also have a phone system. It's all click button, 6 consoles. We also have a backup site at the fairgrounds. When we're up at the fair, how many of you have been to the fair and seen the medical building up there? What you probably didn't see is there's a secret command post in there. I was just there yesterday doing some updating on the computers and training. And if something happens and we go down and the city of Meadville's out of power and our generator stops, or for some reason we need to bug out, we still have access to another command post locally. Another thing this winter, when Erie County was getting all that snow, their dispatchers couldn't get to work. So what did we do? We are tied into the same system of 8 other counties in the northern tier. And we can plug in our headset, log on, just click what county we're logging on under, and we had actually dispatchers sitting in Crawford taking calls for Erie County. And the calls would come up on their computer, they process them normally, we're all certified with the same credentials. The maps and the technology that we have allow us to do that these days. And they would ship those calls, they would pop up on Erie County's dispatch, and they would just send what units they needed to. So that was kind of something that technology has come so far to help us out. It's not just limited to, fire, ambulance. There's a big career as well associated with that.
If he gets a call. So there's a lot of technology, and that's part of the thing. We'll make sure Mrs. Pelc gets it too. It's not just fire and EMS. It's every day I go look at 3 mobile data terminals in my fire station. 2 in the fire trucks and 1 in the ambulance to make sure they're on, make sure they're connected to the internet, make sure there's no updates. Then we also use, it's called I Am Responding, another software, another app that lets us get those calls from the 911 center, and then we can push if we're going to the scene or if we're going to the station. And then when I get to the station, I can look at a display screen, and it shows me, who's coming. Do I have enough drivers? Do I have enough people to do the emergency, or do I need to start calling additional fire departments? That thing always crashes. You always have to reboot it or do something. So there's a lot of technology, and I think if you don't want to go in a burning building, but you still want to keep our computers and all our technology working. Maybe next time we'll bring a thermal imaging camera. I don't know if you've heard of that, but it's just like that camera there, but it looks and sees you as color. So the warmer you are, the more red the color is. The colder, like the tables or the floor, is the darker it's going to be. So technologies. You said these really big ones now. They fit right onto our air packs. So again, technology's come a long way from the fire service that we can actually look here. Some even have it right pulls down over their air mask. That they just kind of watch all the Secret Squirrel shows, FBI or any of those shows. Some of that technology is finally coming to the fire service and the EMS service. So some of the questions that we get asked quite a bit: can a junior ride official vehicles to a scene of emergency? And Jen put this in. Yes, fun fact, fire engines, rescue squad, ambulances all have seat belts too. So in fact, our newest truck, it makes a terrible noise unless everybody is seat belted. You can't fool it or trick it or anything. You have to sit down, you put your seat belt on, and then it'll be nice and quiet. So yeah, you can ride on fire ambulances. Does junior firefighters get to wear turnout gear? Absolutely. The turnout, we can talk about that, or if you'll bring yours over now, Jen. When John started, there were boots, and there were long coats, and there were like orange gloves and a plastic helmet. And the technology's come such a long way with our turnout gear. You probably might have seen this during Fire Prevention Week. So when Jen puts on a coat or a pants, she's actually putting 3 coats and 3 pants on.
So yeah, there's actually layers in here, and just kind of like an oven door. There's so much to keep you safe inside of a fire. So one of my favorite things, I waited my whole life for a pink helmet. I finally got my pink helmet. I waited a long time for this. So.
Mine's white. John's is white.
Greg thought it was
I
white.
won't wear white myself.
Yeah, if you're colorblind, it looks white. But line officers, that's another thing on, different members have different helmets. There's the old time leather. That's what those are considered the best of the best of the best. Other ones, chiefs wear white. Some departments, probationary members wear blue. Same thing with, we have black pants, tan jackets. Some departments have tan on tan. Some departments have black on black. And that's kind of another way that we can tell who's who when we're all masked up at the scene of a fire. So, boots.
Ellen talked about the good old days when I first started and when he was early starting too. At that time, sometimes the only way the firemen were alerted that there was a call was the siren on top of the fire station or a pole in town. Then we'd go on the radios where they were monitors that you had to plug into somewhere in your house and still listen to the call. So if you're outside, you heard the siren. Inside, you could hear the monitor. Now most departments, all the members run with what's called minuters. And what a minuter does is when you call 911, it goes to Jen or one of the other operators, dispatchers, and then they dispatch that department. And and they record also. But here's our last call.
Message 1. I'd like Department 7 for full assist.
how we're alerted. We do IM responding, you hit on your phone, and as Alan mentioned, you know.
Some don't carry monitors, they just
Yeah,
carry
some
their
do that.
cell
Sometimes
phones.
there could be a little delay.
Well, we like, you know, redundancy is good.
And
Yeah.
that same recording will come up on that program that you can play it back. You can alert on your phone. Oh, there's a fire. I wonder what the dispatch was. Or, oh, I have an animal call. I wonder what the dispatch was.
The MDTs that we have in all our trucks, they can actually, you know, Google Maps, they'll come up, they'll give us directions to go to the call. In the old days, everybody
Red books.
pretty much, you know, do a map, you know, you had to pull a map out, trying to go down the road at nighttime with your flashlight, seeing where you're going. Most of the time, you knew the area you're going to, but there were still times that where do you turn and everything, so we would.
Little allotments out in North Shenango Township
Yeah,
around Pine
down around
Connie Lake
Atlantic,
has a lot of
Geneva, there's,
allotments. Back roads. Back roads are really hard to find if people don't post their mailboxes. There's no street lights. There's none of that. You know, mailboxes visually. Drive down the road these days and try to pretend like you're in an ambulance or a fire truck and try reading the mailboxes. So when you get on the bus today, try reading the mailboxes. It is so hard. And I would say 50% of this county does not post their addresses on their
So
mailboxes.
that's your homework, is make
So-
sure your house number, I mean, it's great for UPS and FedEx, you know, to get packages. A few years ago, we went to addressing, in fact, a guy in our office gives you addresses, so if you want to change your address, he can do it for you. Everybody knows what number to call if you need fire, ambulance, or police, right? What number is that? Right, years ago, it was 724-2545.
2-4.
2545,
There's a
2548.
whole bunch of them. And right before John's time, the fire chief had a phone in their house. So when you called, you needed help, you called the fire chief or his wife or whoever was at the house, and they would answer, then they would run to the station and blow the siren. So, I mean, you know, horse and buggy days to, you know, $1 million apparatus. And they're all computers too. The new fire trucks, ambulances, there's nothing but computers in them. You just push buttons instead of pulling levers.
Funeral homes were the first dispatchers.
Funeral home, the town nearby where I worked, they were friends of my parents, and they always had somebody at the house to answer the phone, and then there was a doorbell that you would ring, and it would set the siren off at the fire station up there. So what you would do is take the information for the call the fire station, just let the phone ring, but you rang the siren from the funeral home, and then as soon as the first person arrived at the station, they picked them up and you gave them the information over the phone to the firemen at that
We've
time.
had stories where people said, my house is on fire, and then hung up. I mean, that's the old days.
Yeah.
We didn't have a clue where it was, but nowadays with the computers, and as soon as you hit that last one, boom, they got you, which is a good thing. Remember we had, remind me of that one. We had a kindergarten girl come to our county and visit her grandpa and grandma. Grandpa went golfing, grandma fell down the steps and was unconscious. She called 911, so they sent fire, ambulance, police over to help. Got grandpa off the golf course, took grandma to the hospital, and it was a good ending to that story because the grandma was okay. Even, you know, kindergarten kids calling 911 is important.
You can actually text to 911. We have that capabilities. One of the new really cool systems that we have is Prepared app. So when you call 911 and say your house is on fire, we're like, okay, are you out of the house? Yeah, I'm standing in my front yard on my cell phone. Well, now we say, okay, I'm going to send you a link. Just click on the link on the message and it's going to show me your camera. Just grant me access to the camera, and we have people that will point their phones to the fire, and we're able to see, you know, my barn's on fire, my yard's on fire, my vehicle's on fire. We've had crashes. We get these prepared messages. So we're able to tell the fire chiefs. We have different terminology that we
You
learn.
can send it to the MDTs too, right?
Not yet.
Okay.
That's the next phase that we want to be able to do, is like we can tell the chief, you have a working fire, which is, you know, visible flames, smoke, everything. We can say, you know, fully involved, which is 3/4 of the house is, you know, involved in fire. We can give the fire chief updates per prepared message. We have a 3-car accident, heavy entrapment, you know, 1 patient ejected. We can give them all this information, seeing it through the camera phone. But yeah, texting 911, we can see that now. You can text from tablets, as long as you have Wi-Fi to get a signal out. There's a text message. If you can't make a phone call and you're in an uncomfortable situation, you can now text. A couple years ago, we had kids playing on the bus with the cell phones, and they were prank calling the dispatchers. They actually tracked the bus and knew which route it was. They had state police involved. State police ended up stopping that bus. They got on the bus and confiscated everybody's phone until they figured out which kids were calling 911 and pranking it. And the kids actually ended up bringing us subs and cookies and apology. So yeah, don't prank 911 because we can see you. And if you call 911 accidentally, it happens all the time. People pocket dial, butt dial, throw your phone in your bag. It happens. iWatches, if you hold the button too long, it calls. Just stay on the line and let us know because we don't have to call you back or track you down or try to send an officer to your location.
Yeah, they sent state police to my father-in-law because his phone called 911 by itself or something, but yeah. Because that could have been someone that called 911 and then, passed out, or it could be, a law enforcement nature where you can't talk, but you at least got, some kind of message. What's that we done?
8:58, so you got about 10 minutes.
So what are your ages in here?
14.
Oh, yeah.
13, 14? All right, so the good old days, we could do anything we wanted at a fire ambulance scene, but people got hurt, kids got hurt, so now labor and industry has certain requirements or limitations on what you can do. Like, you can't drive until you're 16. I'm sure you're always driving before you were 16. I was pumping a fire truck before I was 16. I think you're allowed to do that, but I didn't drive it. So you're allowed to participate and engage in organized training activities, provide first aid care to victims, assist medical personnel, assist with scene support, cleanup operations. If you can imagine, you go to a fire, hold hose, you open up ceilings, you cut holes in roofs, you're pretty tired. Now you get back to the station, now you gotta clean all that hose, you gotta pack all that hose, put all the equipment, but you never know when you might get another call. I mean, we've been on calls where we get another call, and we have to call someone else. So it's really important, important job. Outside the structure, a collapse zone. Roll-up hose, put away tools. And then 16, 17-year-olds assist with outside, call it exterior operations. So you can actually use a hose line to put out fire, setting ladders, setting up positive pressure fans. We push good air into a structure now instead of trying to pull the bad air out because of the science. There's a lot of science into firefighting and what fire does. I'm sure you've learned about the fire tetrahedron or the fire triangle. You need oxygen, fuel, and a heat source to make fires. If you take one of those away, the fire goes out, right? So water, we're cooling it, or if we use foam, we're taking away the oxygen, or we're using tools and taking away the fuel from that fire. Last year was terrible on grass fires. I don't know how many we went, and this year.
Last fall, when the weather got real dry, we didn't have rain for a lot of weeks. Some were caused by careless burning. You always want to watch what you're burning outside. A lot of people like to burn their fall leaves, but you get a little bit of wind blowing, and it blows into the woods and stuff. Grass fires, brush fires, wood fires are really tough. But then they can start climbing the trees and everything, and it's hard to get equipment, fire trucks, and even the brush trucks back to those fires. So still a lot of hands-on. Where a tank with 5 gallons of water and then a hand pump is how we have to battle some of those fires way back.
See, if I like to drive ATVs. Yeah.
Yep.
So one of the departments have all-terrain vehicles. They have a 4-wheel amphibious vehicle that'll go on land and water, and a lot of them have Kawasaki mules or Kubota. Linesville has a nice Kubota with tracks on it. So again, specialized, equipment for types of emergencies like that.
So, a lot of things. In June, you can fight grass fires.
Yeah.
So it's nice to have a few juniors show up at a grass fire.
You only pulled me out of school once.
But, you know, when the siren goes off, depending on what kind of call it is, everybody reports to the station usually, unless it's right next door to your house or something. We get to the station, put our gear on that like Jen has, and get on the correct trucks. This is where we call them line officers, what they are fire officers. They're the chief, the assistant chief, the fire captain, the fire lieutenant. They can direct everybody what trucks to get on for certain calls. We take certain trucks first with certain manpower in it. Like if we're going out for a structure fire, a house fire, we have to have at least 2 people on it that can put on the air packs. We don't want to send that first truck out with nobody that can that isn't qualified, put on an air pack. To be qualified for an air pack, you have to go through the essentials class, and the last part of your essentials class is a live burn. I've seen people, grown adults, go through essentials class and, you know, do all the training and everything, and then they get to what's called a live burn, to where we actually, you know, have different structures. You can set a fire on inside the structure, advance into the structure, and then they don't like that anymore. They don't like that. For me, and I know Jen, and I'm sure Alan, that was their most exciting part, was going into a structure fire. But that doesn't mean that we can't use them on the fire ground. Alan mentioned, you know, raising ladders, pulling hoses. All of our hoses come off the truck. They're 200-foot pre-connected, so we have to pull those off and get them, you know, straightened out and everything. Everybody thinks as soon as the firemen get to the scene, they can put water on the fire and extinguish it. That doesn't always happen. You know, sometimes it's complicated. It's difficult to get the truck close to the house. That's why we have 200-foot lays. Then you can straighten the hose out. We have a saying in our department, you know, our main objective in this fire is to put the wet stuff on the red stuff. The wet stuff being the water, the red stuff being the flames. That's how we put fires out. You got to calculate how many BTUs. A structure fire inside a building, the house is all brick on the outside. The brick doesn't burn, but now the brick contains all the flames on the inside, so you have a higher temperature actually. It doesn't free burn, so you have all of that heat trapped in there. It can result in different things that are dangerous to the firefighters, such as flashovers, backdrafts. That has to do with the temperature, as Alan mentioned, the triangle, temperature, oxygen, and a source of heat. If you have all 3 of those, and that temperature starts to climb, it's what's called a flashover, where the whole room ignites into flames. It can be very dangerous. So this is all stuff that we're trained for and learn. After the fires are over, everything's extinguished, you know, put everything back on the truck, go back to the station. We had a barn fire last year. We spent 4 hours at the barn fire extinguishing the fire. We got back to the station, spent 5 hours cleaning everything up, getting it back on the trucks. Barn fires, you know, a lot of hose comes off, a lot of equipment comes off, have to clean it, get it back on the trucks. You know, we don't want to put something back on the truck that's broken. You know, make sure it gets fixed then before it gets back on the truck. So there's a lot of stuff that goes on not behind the scenes, at the scenes, but, you know, besides just going into a fire and putting water on it.
So some of the other things about being in a fire and an ambulance, you're going to learn leadership, you're going to learn teamwork, responsibility, community service, because we're doing a service to the community, work ethic and department values, department organization and duties. We do a lot of fire prevention. If we can prevent fires from starting, that's our whole goal. Yeah, we like to go to fires. I think I was in Valley High School, and the teacher knew that me and my buddy were firefighters, and she was giving us a hard time because, so you like fire. You know, I forget what kind of essay we were supposed to write for English, but yeah, we like going to those, but you know, we prefer not to. But we're trained to do that, you know, if it's needed. So we do a lot of fire prevention. You know, we're here today trying to get boys and girls to join. We have a lot of women, a lot of girls in our fire and ambulance services, a lot of men as well. So it's, you know, for both of us, leading healthy and safe lifestyles. I'm not as fit, so I don't do certain things, and I don't like heights, so I don't do ladders. I can put them up.
I don't like ladders
and someone
either.
else can climb them. But,
Last week I conquered my fears. We had a training, and I cut a school bus apart on a ladder with the tool, a 50-pound tool raised above my head. I'm terrified of ladders, but I did it. So we train so that when the time arises, even though I am terrified of ladders, school buses are pretty tall for me. So we had to put a ladder up, and I did it. I conquered my fears in a safe, controlled setting, and knowing that, you know, if you guys are in a school bus and it crashes, I know how to cut a school bus apart now. And just because we're from Conneaut Lake doesn't mean that there's not another neighboring department where you live. I dispatch for the county. I know Conneaut School District covers from North Shenango to Fallowfield, Greenwood, Summit, Conneaut Lake, Linesville, Conneautville, Springboro.
Goes
Some
all
parts
the way
of-
from the Erie County line down to Mercer County, the western half of the county,
You know.
the Conneaut School District.
Concordan, Vernon Central, if you're on one of those outer lying areas, Hayfield.
Yeah.
So
Those are the
there's a lot of
that
departments, you
border
know,
Conneaut School District.
depending on where you live, that you could join the closest one to you.
And it looks good on a resume. If you're applying for a summer job and you say, hey, I'm with the fire or ambulance service for so many years, or and here's the things I learned, you know, that helps. You know, there's some grants that you can get by being in the fire and ambulance service from departments or from the state, trying to make more incentives. Some will even,
Scholarships.
some will even pay for your college if you're in a fire and ambulance service. So, you know, starting at a young age of 14, up to 17, and still being in it, you learn a lot of good life skills, and it could become a career for you, or you could go off on another career, but then nights and weekends, or if you work third shift, days and weekends, you can, you know, help your local fire and ambulance service.
And that would, you know, anywhere in the state, anywhere in the country needs volunteers. So any training or any experience you got now would follow you wherever you end up later in life. So we really appreciate you guys coming in. We'll give you a handout on the way out. If you have questions about the junior program, whether it's today or another day, and you want more information, I'll help you get that.
Yeah, my phone number for the office is on there, so call me and tell me where you live, and then we'll get to the right fire department.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.